Hola y bienvenidos al podcast Un gato en tierra de perros, vuestra referencia para la política estadounidense, la cultura y mucho más. Hello, I'm Joe Magaha. Thank you, friends, for being with me for another episode of Un Gato en Tierra de Perros. Today we're going to have a couple of esteemed gentlemen to talk about conflicts throughout the world that the United States particularly is involved in, and possibly other conflicts as well. We have direct from Rome, Mr. Joey Meugniot. Welcome, Joey.
Hey, thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. And from Antalya, Turkey, we have Stephen Eugene Kuhn. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, Joe. How you doing? Hey, Joey and Joe. Great to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure having you guys. It's been kind of crazy. As I just mentioned, there was a shooting in Bondi Beach in Australia, and that's kind of the news of the morning. But that's kind of ongoing. There's a lot of little terrorist attacks. They just busted, I think, 3 men in Germany too, who are about to do another one of those drive-throughs in a Christmas market.
Christmas market, yeah. Whether that's real or not, I don't even know anymore. It's just, this whole. Obviously Bondi Beach is real. I saw that. But that goes to show you what happens when you disarm citizens. If that would happen in America, it wouldn't have lasted very long because there would have been citizens there that would have taken them out. And
couldn't agree more.
yeah,
and I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of this in the United States is because of that simple reason. Like there's always the fear of the we'll call them bad guys, right? But like there's always that fear that they're never quite sure, right? There's guns under pillows, guns in backpacks, guns in fanny packs, but guns everywhere. Like you never quite know, so there's always a risk you take whenever you do something like that. That a good guy with a gun will take out the bad guy with the gun.
That's the whole point. It's the deterrence, isn't it? And if the bad guys know no one else has guns, who's going to get guns? The ones who obey the laws or the ones who don't obey the laws? It's obvious, So the only people who have guns are the people that don't obey the laws. So, I mean, for me,
that's they're not legal in Australia, right? So like,
I'm saying
that's the crazy part. Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's the crazy part, right? Is that like it's supposed to be a super safe, gun-free country, but obviously, the people that don't follow laws and don't care if they're illegal or not will find a way to get them and then.
And did you see those weapons? Did you see those weapons? They weren't just like handguns. These were long range rifles. These were like semi-automatic massive rifles, 30-06 or 30-30 or 7.62, whatever they were. They were huge.
They were big, and they were bolt action. And these guys this is not. I mean, looking at the video, I mean, not that I'm a firearms expert, but I've been in the Army long enough to fire a few of them, and like, this is not their first time shooting them. Like,
no.
they were squeezing off rounds and reach it. Oh man, it was they were very like.
Yeah,
like they were
up,
as
down,
fast as they
over,
possibly could.
Back and forth. They were going. They were evading and they were popping up. And
Yeah. It was this is not the first time they've been shot at, so like they knew they were moving their head. They were, I mean, I don't know their background, I know literally nothing about them, but just watching their body language, you can tell that like this is not the first time they've engaged with
it reminds me when I was watching that, someone tagged me on X, and like my X exploded from like 3,000 people. I'm like 45,000 right now within a couple of weeks. And someone tagged me, and it reminded me of the Paris. You remember that Je suis Charlie thing where the guys were in this like VW Golf and they were shooting everybody, and they got out of the Golf with their weapons up here, and then trigger discipline. Their fingers were not on the trigger. I was like, they're professionals. No one walks with the weapon on their shoulder. Trigger discipline, finger straight up. I was like, man, this is crazy. And so
you can always tell the fingers.
And you can see a lot. You can see the lot way they move, the way they hold it. If someone's carrying a weapon up here, combat carry, they're trained. And then the finger discipline, the trigger discipline on top of that. I'm not an expert either. I mean, I was in the military just like you. I'm not sure how long you were in. I was in 7 years, but that was enough to learn, to see, to recognize, pattern recognition.
You can always tell, like, when I see pictures of like the Taliban or any of the fighters in Syria or something like that, if they were Western trained. Well, if they're Western trained, if they're NATO trained, right? They have the rifle down at the low ready, right?
Yep.
And they've got their finger off the trigger
Yep.
usually, and the one if they're carrying M4s or like AR platforms, the dust
Yeah.
cover's closed, right? Those are like
Yeah.
things that like even but you can tell if you were in the military, you
Yeah.
can tell
Yeah.
that they're Western trained because that's what the US military teaches
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah.
like
Basics.
yeah, we pass that on to them, and then
Yep.
they do it. So whenever I see those big kind of pictures of a
Yeah.
bunch of Taliban fighters or things like that, like I'm always like, oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, but then
Like,
you see the poke and hope guys. The poke and hope guys are like this,
yeah,
and they're
yeah,
shooting each
yeah,
other and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. But I watched the video. I watched all 11 minutes, almost short of 11 minutes of it, and it was interesting to watch them like, and you could tell that they were communicating amongst themselves. They were
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
back and forth over both sides of the bridge and stuff. It was
And you saw
anyway.
how brazen that guy was. Who the guy he took his weapon away. He just stood there like, yeah, what are you gonna do? You know.
Yeah.
And you saw that the citizen wouldn't shoot him either. I just shot that guy in the leg to keep him immobile.
Yeah,
They
you
wouldn't
don't
even do
know if
that 'cause
he's got a pistol as well or something else.
yeah, and he was worried. The guy didn't shoot him because he was probably worried he was going to go to jail. I mean, that's how bad
Yeah.
it is in
Mhm.
these societies. Like, okay, I took the guy's weapon who was killing people, but if I shoot him, it's the same thing in Hungary where I lived for a long time. Someone broke into my house and I caught him
Mhm.
and I took care of him a little bit, and they pressed charges against me.
Or
And
assault.
it's like he was in my house and I got charges pressed against me.
It's insane.
you know and
That's
so a lot of these
funny.
these societies are crazy like that, and it's the same thing there. It's like in Australia or even in the UK. Well, you saw it in the UK. Let's not even talk about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it happened in Italy too. There was a Carabinieri officer that shot somebody, and they investigated him and wanted to charge him with murder for stopping like a guy, like a machete knife stabber guy
Yeah,
attack. And they want. I mean, eventually they ended up clearing him after kind of
yeah,
public outrage. They're like, what are they? I mean, they all the Carabinieri carry pistols. Like, what's
yeah,
the purpose of carrying it if
yeah.
like if you use it, you're going to end up being investigated for murder, right? And he
Well,
stopped an actual attack, like life, limb, eyesight. That's kind of what they teach you. Like, you need to,
yeah,
if you need to stop something to save those things, like, then go for it. He did that, and then they wanted to investigate him, and the left wanted to investigate him and
yeah. The
charge him with murder and a
Germany,
bunch of other stuff.
Germany's
Yeah.
the same way. Like I have friends that are
Well,
cops in Germany, and when I stationed in Germany, and then I lived there for another 13 years, and they said 85% of all police officers in a 35-year career never draw their weapon one time because they get in trouble if they do. And one time I was a doorman at a club when I first got out of the military, and there was a guy running down the street shooting at the cops who were chasing him, right? So running literally on foot. And I took off across the street, still in my military mindset. Took off across the street, jumped in a car, tackled him, and took his weapon away. And when I hit him, I rolled into a cafe and knocked this like baby carriage over, and his baby rolled out. It was all covered up in blankets, so it wasn't hurt. But the cops put me in handcuffs,
Mm.
and I'm like, I just like saved your life.
yeah.
You got involved in something you have nothing to do. You're holding a weapon. I'm like, it was his weapon who was shooting at you. It was crazy, man. I
Well, it's
was
like
sitting there
the
completely
German
baffled.
cop that got the German cop that there was a guy that stopped like a terrorist attack in Germany, and the cop stopped a good guy, and then the terrorist stabbed the cop in the neck and killed
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
Right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Europe's it's a wild place to live, man. Like, I see a lot of talk to a lot of people here, and it's a fascinating difference in mentality between Americans
Well,
and
even
the majority of
countries, because
Europeans. Yeah. Well, I
even
mean,
countries,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
Italy's even. I mean, we love Italy. We're in Italy every 2 months. Like we love it down there. But I've lived in 8 European countries, and the hardest to deal with is always the Germans because they're so rule oriented, but no one else is. Only the
Uh,
Germans. So they follow the rules, ABC all the way
Or
through,
the
but no one else
Swiss.
does. So it's like, dude, you're doing that, but you're getting ran over. I mean, it's crazy.
But this is what we have to do. These are the rules.
Yeah.
And the Swiss are very similar. I mean, that
Oh
kind of
yeah, that's right.
Swiss,
That's right.
that kind of Swiss,
But
Austria, Germany.
every Swiss has a gun, though. Every Swiss has a gun in their
Right.
apartment, in their house, in their everyone's in the reserves. I was staying when I was living in Zurich. I was staying in this woman's house. She had a whole. It was a 550-year-old house, which cracked me up because it was older than my country was, and
My
she said,
favorite part
"Oh,
about living in Europe.
yeah, yeah." And then she was like 81 years old or something. She had a weapon in her closet. I'm like, what? She goes, "Yeah, everybody's in the reserves here. Everybody has a weapon." It's like, okay.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Switzerland is that the fines are so stiff, right? So like usually if there's something comes with a fine, it's free for a price, right? Like that's kind of the mentality a lot
Yeah.
of people look at it with, except in Switzerland. Like if you get caught speeding even a little bit, it's going to be like 4 or 5 thousand euros, right? Like
Okay.
it's an insane fine. Like if
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
like if you pass, you're not allowed to pass in traffic on the right hand side. If you get caught passing on the right hand side, it's going to be a 4 or 5 thousand euro
Yeah.
fine for doing that. So like nobody does it because it's an insane fine for
Yeah,
for
imagine
something.
that.
So like yeah,
Imagine that,
and
people following the
they
laws.
enforce it. Well, the penalty is great, and then they
Yeah.
enforce it. So who
Yeah.
would if no one enforced it, they could have a 10,000 euro fine or a
Yeah.
million euro fine. It wouldn't matter if nobody enforced it, right? So
So like
part of it
America,
is
you
that
mean?
like
Yeah, I was
well, yeah,
gonna say,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
Or like in
It,
America, yeah, death
it's only
penalty if you get
the
caught, and yeah, it's big. Yeah,
and they charge you with it, and you manage to actually get to that point,
yeah, and you don't have 15 lawyers and a DA that lets you off,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I know
In this
it's
case, you don't even have to
I
have a
love,
good lawyer anymore. You just have to have an average DA because they're not going to charge you with anything if
yeah,
you're not white.
exactly,
So it's
exactly,
whatever.
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Well, I loved living in Switzerland. I just remember how expensive it was, man. I remember taking a taxi to the airport every time. It was like half my paycheck.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Well, now
In
they have
certain areas. Yeah.
And one thing is, but I was in Zurich, so and one thing I noticed is that when you're in a taxi, just a random thing, is they wait in traffic like everybody else. In Germany, they have bus and taxi lanes, so the bus and taxis always go faster. Not in Switzerland, you just sit in traffic like everybody else. It's crazy. It was nuts.
We need to have that in the United States. In fact, we have bus lanes, but we need to have truck lanes. Really, I think that would be so
Yeah.
much better because people will cut trucks off and they think that trucks can break,
And stop.
on a dime, which they can't. And then, people are just stupid. So
Yeah.
I think it would be so much better because we depend on trucks for everything. For all
Well,
our,
it's I don't know how Joey feels living in Europe, but what I notice is when I go back to the States, we are such an aggressive, entitled sort of society that when someone's in front of you, beside you, at the mall, in the grocery store, in a car, whatever, like it's their world.
Mhm.
Like there's no like I'm first,
character
whatever I
syndrome.
want. What's that?
Main character syndrome. Everyone thinks
Yeah.
they're the main character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yes. Yeah.
And-
I mean, I
and
see that a lot when driving here. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like everyone thinks they're like no matter what they're doing. If you're in Italy anyway, if they're driving, they're the most important. They have the most important place to be. Nothing else matters. Like they're all F1 pilots. They all think they're like Mario Andretti, right? Like everybody, and they're like,
where do you live in Italy?
Rome.
Oh, you're in Rome direct. Wow, we were just there
like in
3 weeks ago.
in the center. So like I'm in the center of Rome every single day. So like one of the things I really like about Italy is as far as driving goes, or in talking about trucks, is that like trucks can't drive on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like you won't see like big big vehicles on Sunday. They're not allowed to drive, and so it's much more enjoyable to drive on Sundays. It's also a lot safer because like a lot of these guys, well, I mean, they have a similar problem that we have in the United States. That, like a lot of the truck drivers here aren't native, right? The companies will get them licensed, get people from North Africa usually, and get them licensed and driving on the streets, and so
pay them dirt
like it's
cheap.
just because they can pay them 20%, like they can pay them 20% of what you would have to pay an Italian to do the job, which is a bigger problem overall. Like that's what happens. And so but Sundays are great. Like that's one of my favorite things to do. And then they do have bus and taxi, a lot of bus and taxi lanes here, which is always nice because then it's usually easier. But so going back to like sitting in traffic all day, one of the times I realized how it made me like the president of Italy a lot. I was sitting in traffic near the Vatican, and I looked over, and it's like stopped traffic. Like cars in park, we're just sitting there, and I look over to my right, and the president of Italy is sitting in traffic next to me. So Mattarella, and he's the president of Italy, right? So if there was anyone that was going to be able to like turn the lights on, their motorcade, get through traffic, go where they got to go, like he has a pretty good valid reason, like the business of state is happening. But no, he was just sitting in traffic next to me, just talking to his driver, hanging out, like just like everybody else. And I was like, you know what, that's the kind of guy I want in politics, like just hanging out with everybody else.
Do you know this this influencer down there, pretty recent influencer in Italy, who talks about immigration really hard. At the end of every video, he goes "ciao." Like at the end, he just ends a sentence with "ciao" in the middle of a sentence. You know what I'm talking about?
Is
This
he
guy?
the
I don't. I mean,
is he
there's
the one that follows pickpocketers around as well?
No. He talks about
that's
women and children and getting raped, and then just he tells a story. Then he goes,
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo, yeah, that's it, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when I was in Rome, I met with a guy from Turning Point USA who called me and said, "Hey, I'm in Rome. Let's meet." That's why I went to Rome with my wife. And then this guy was there, and we all met. And we did a video together, the three of us, right?
Ah, nice.
And this guy didn't share the video on his platform because he wanted to, like, I don't know, just keep his sovereignty or whatever. But that guy, that guy's a trip, man. Like he has no holds barred at all, like zero. This guy is hardcore, and it's good to see. Like we went to, I forget, what's that building with the hole in the top, Joe, in the middle?
The Pantheon.
Yeah, Pantheon. So we were right in front of there, the fountain in front of it. We were filming right there in the
Yeah.
fountain. 1,000 people.
One of my
there
favorite
watching.
restaurants is right there.
Which one?
Or it's called Napolitano's. Excellent, by the way, if you're listening to this and you ever end up in Rome.
We
and you're
actually
at the
went. We
Pantheon,
actually went.
Napolitano,
We went
yeah.
there. Yeah, we actually went to the Pantheonos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great restaurant. Like I've
Yeah.
eaten there for years. It's funny is that I'm obviously an American, but I'm married to an Italian, and so when I go places, they tend to remember my wife and my daughter, and they never remember me. So when I've been there like 20
Welcome
or
to the
30
club,
times,
man.
and every time I go there, it's like the first time I've been there. But if for my wife's been there 3 times, and they're like, "Oh, so good to see you. Welcome back. It's been so long. Oh, would you like the best taste?" Like every time, like,
You're like, I've been here
"What the hell
50
am I?"
times.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. I have to get used to it. I'm the least important person in my household, so
Yeah, join the club.
just below the dog. So
I get
yeah,
it.
it's there's a lot of stuff that goes on in there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Europe that's fascinating to me. It's one of the reasons I enjoy being an expat. Is one that, like, I get to experience it firsthand, and I get to see and talk. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. I live in Rome, and the reason I like living here is because there's usually a tri-mission from every country here. So they usually have UN people. They've got the Holy See, and then they've got the Italian staff. So like you get kind of triple of all the diplomats here. So you end up talking to a lot of people. It's a
Yeah.
great place to network.
Yeah, when I
But
lived, I used to live in Vienna as well, and right in front of the UN, we had a business, and so you have 136 embassies and consulates, and missions, and OPEC is there, the whole works. So every day was some event with 50 delegates of whatever. So I mean,
yeah,
within like 2 months, you knew everybody in the entire city, and everybody knows each other. And at the top of our building, we were at the Hammerhead building, which is, if you know anything about Vienna, there's a big high rise on the other side of the Danube, and there's like a hammer sticking out. That's where the CIA sits up there, just in case you're wondering. And and they used to come down to our business. And then I had a business. It was a health club, and one of the guys would always come in there. He was a really nice guy and stuff. A couple years later, maybe 10 years later, I'm reading this book about the CIA operative and all this kind of stuff. And in the book, he has a picture of himself standing there with a T-shirt on with my health club, the health club name, one of the T-shirts from my health club in Vienna. I was like, I knew it. I knew he was CIA. It was crazy, all the kind of stuff that we see in Europe. But I mean, I've lived in 8 countries, and I got to really look at the difference in all the cultures. And I have to say, I kept moving east. That's why I'm in Turkey now. It's like I started in West Germany, and then I moved over a little bit further, and then I moved to Hungary, and then it was like Spain, Portugal, Austria, Switzerland, all the way through. UK I was as well, but I didn't like that at all. And then I ended up in Hungary, and then I went to Czech Republic, and Poland was fantastic, man. And I just had a blast. And now I'm in Turkey, which is probably the safest, the calmest, most orderly place, best place for kids I've ever lived. If you wouldn't believe it, at least here in Antalya. Okay, I'm not living in the mountains with the sheep herders and stuff, but
or
you're
in
not
the
in Istanbul.
Kurdish region.
no, I'm not in Istanbul. We would go to Istanbul. We were there 3 days ago, but getting
And so I've lived in Italy for 5 years, and so I've gotten to um um I've traveled all over Europe now at this point. I think my favorite place to go outside of Italy is probably Budapest.
really.
I have a lot of friends there. I like first of all, I like the currency conversion, so I get to, like, it's great.
Yeah,
And then it's very clean, right? So like
yeah. Well,
it
at least
feels
downtown
like
is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's parts of Rome that are clean, but
Yeah,
like there's a lot of parts that aren't, right? It just kind of
yeah,
depends. But like I enjoy Budapest immensely. Like probably my least favorite city is Paris. Um, and I've been to Paris numerous times now at this point, and
Out of
I think every
Paris.
time I go, I like it a little less. To the point where like I'm kind of like, eh. London,
Paris.
London I enjoy immensely. Just because of the history, not
I
because
don't
of
know if I could
anything
get in
else. It's just
anymore. I don't know if I could
well,
get into London.
I enjoy, it's crazy is like being an expat living overseas, and I speak some Italian but not a tremendous amount, but like um I enjoy going to London because it's easy. Like I just get to speak my language and everybody understands me, and it's very comfortable. Like it's nice. And if you have lived in any big city, like just know to be careful, right? Like I would not be
Yeah.
I'm not any more careful in London than I was when I lived in New York City.
Hmm.
Like your head just needs to be a little bit on a swivel. You got to pay attention to stuff around you, and you'll be fine. Right? Don't look like a target, and you won't be a target. But like I was telling Joe last time we spoke, was I had just come back from
Madrid, I think. No,
goodness,
or
Madrid. Yeah, I just come back from Madrid. I was pleasantly surprised. Madrid.
Mhm.
The center of Madrid was fantastic. I really enjoyed my time in Madrid. But like that's the cultural stuff, right? There's
Hmm.
and the part that really gets me though is when you go outside of those bigger cities and outside of the center, what do like normal people do, and what does that look like to them? So like in Italy, I travel often throughout all of Italy,
Hmm.
and it's always fascinating to me to see like what the impacts of immigration, what the impacts of some of these policies and things are on like small towns and some of these other
Yeah.
areas. Like when I see North Africans in the middle of rural Italy, I'm like, that's weird. We're not in the big city anymore. We're not like by a train station in Rome or Milan
Well, that's where they
or
dump them. That's
Florence.
where they dump
Yeah,
them. It's the same thing. When I was
and
working in Germany,
yeah,
when I was living in Hungary, I had a contract in Germany in small town Pfarrkirchen, it was called, and Egenfelden, and they brought in like 1,000 refugees from Syria or wherever, and just dumped them in this town of like 3,000 people. And overnight, this thing turned into a dump, and these guys were sitting on the curb drinking beer and grabbing the women and stuff. And I actually on my own time was doing like patrols up and down the street because they were going, it was like a little village with, a cobblestone street and the little shops and stuff. And these guys would go in the shops and harass the women, the cashiers and stuff. And I'd go in there and I'd pull them out by the ear and throw them out in the street and stuff. Like I was literally, and then the cops came and told me I'm not allowed to do that. And I said, well, then why don't you do it?
Yeah.
And I was always getting in trouble with the cops there with the polizei because they weren't doing their job. Oh, we got to be careful. They're guests here. I'm like, well, then you should act like guests.
Yeah.
And I don't
It's
have a
changed
problem with
so
yeah.
much.
anybody. I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with anybody. Anybody can do it, if you're fleeing somewhere. But when I was in Budapest when this whole invasion started, and I remember Orban said, we're not letting anybody through because everyone knows that anybody who comes to Europe has to register in the first country where they cross into European Union.
Yeah.
And the Greeks were sending them all through Serbia to Hungary. Hungary's like, no, we're not doing this. So they put them all at the train station in Budapest, thousands of them. So I'm like to my buddy Luke, let's go. So I went to the train station and I brought my phone with me to interview some of these guys. Right, this is back 2017 or whatever it was, 16, 15, I don't remember. And I couldn't find anybody from Syria. There was Serbs, there was Iranians, there was like Afghans, there you name it, everybody. And finally, I found three guys from Syria, and they were talking to BBC and CNN. They were waiting in line to talk to these three guys because that's all that was left. And there was three women out of about 3,000 people, and they were in the background of the camera shot just to make it look good. And so I waited my turn and I talked to these guys and they're like, yeah, my country's at war and we're going to Germany and my friends live there and make a lot of money and we want to go there. I'm like, so did you experience war? He goes, oh no, we've been living in Turkey for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, what?
Mm.
So you just go, yeah, we make more money. Why would I stay in Turkey if I can go to Germany? And that's the attitude. That's the attitude that a lot of these guys had. And I went through, and there's a whole black market that goes with this too, by the way, because they just wanted to get to West Germany, Austria and Germany and Italy. Like they wanted to get there. So all these taxi drivers would take money. I'm talking like 3 grand to drive them an hour and a half to the border to Austria through the back roads and dump them off in Austria. So there's like taxi drivers that bought houses after a couple months just from smuggling all these immigrants into Austria. And I know one of them because one of them was related to my ex-wife. So I'm not gonna say who it is, but related to my ex-wife. He had like stacks of money. And here's why. So when I was out there, I saw this guy with a beard, like trimmed up nice and everything. He's sitting there. And I'm like, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah. I said, where are you from? He goes, I'm from Syria. So I met this guy. And I said, what are you doing here? I said, what do you speak perfect English? He goes, yeah, I'm a doctor. And I said, why are you like a refugee? He goes, dude, they paid us. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you sent you to the bank and there was a line at the bank. Everybody got 3,500 euros to leave. I was like, are you kidding me? Would you go on camera? He goes, no, I'm not going on camera with that. And I said, so he said, so they gave us 3,500 euros. Of course, they don't know what 3,500 euros is. So when a taxi driver says, I'll drive you to Austria, how much? And they hold up 3,500 euros, they just take the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was crazy. It was like this whole under market, like it was incredible. And it was a mess, put it that way. And then this was right before this whole political, before the elections, probably a year or two before the elections for Orban again. And then Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, and all this whole delegation showed up in public without even hiding it, trying to unseat Orban. Right? They even went into his office and said, "This is your last term, so get used to it." Like they literally threatened him in his own office. And so they called me through a friend. I knew the foreign minister to America, yada yada yada, and his sister. And they called me, "Hey, can you help us out with social media because the left bought everything up, and we have no power here in our own country." Can you imagine? And they said, you know, the Susan Rice and Clinton, they're here and they're trying to unseat us. So they paid all of the opposition parties. So you had the left, the super leftist, the super rights, the Greens, all of them in one coalition against Orban. And so any Hungarian looked at it and said, "Wait a second! All of a sudden, the Green, the right, and the left are together. Then this has got to be a farce." So of course they lost, and Orban won again. Now they're doing the same thing right now, getting ready to unseat him. So it's going to be a battle of titans. And you know, people talk trash about Orban all the time, but I'll tell you what, you know, I've met him a few times, and I've met his staff. Yeah, they're a little bit crazy, but I think you got to be in the middle of Europe to be, you know, lambasted every single day on media, getting fined $1 million a day, €1 million a day.
That kind of leads me to a question that I think I asked both of you guys when I had you on before, but I wonder because I mean being charged $1 million a day is ridiculous, but the European Union seems to be an experiment that's kind of failed to a certain extent,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if countries are going to start dropping out. I mean, we had Brexit, and there are other, you know, look at what's happened in countries that were already struggling, like Spain, all the Southern Europe, and they're still struggling. And I mean, the unemployment is crazy.
I think they're freezing it right now. Like for instance, you know, Hungary, like Joey said, they still have the forint, which is the oldest currency in Europe. And they're not taking the euro. I can promise you that. You know, that's sovereignty right there. You got the euro, you're screwed, right? And that's what all the Bulgarians and the Romanians and all that stuff, they're all pushing for that. They're not, but the press is saying they're pushing for it. That'll be the biggest sorrow you have. You seen a European country that took the euro and did well? I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't. Have you, Joey? Is it better or worse? You know what I mean? Like it's so obvious, but still the narrative is
Germany.
No, I had 3 businesses in Germany when the euro came. Everything was halved and the prices went up 50%. I got
100%, yeah.
yeah. I got screwed.
The Italian thing, because they pegged it to the Deutschmark. Like that was
Yeah.
originally originally, and then the same thing happened in Italy. I was my wife at the or not at the time. My wife told me at the time that basically everything just got 3 times as triple expensive overnight, like day one.
The devaluation of the currency and then an increase in prices. It was crazy. I had cocktail bars. I had 3 cocktail bars in the nightclub. And in my cocktail bars, my most expensive cocktail was 18 D-Mark, which should have been €9, right? I couldn't sell I was selling it for €4 2 months later. I couldn't even get close to what I was selling it for. But the prices went up, like you said. Dude, it was incredible. It just killed every business.
Yeah, it's the most unsuccessful multicultural economic zone the world's ever seen. You know, so do I think that the EU is gonna, you know, collapse? Not anytime soon. Do I think that there's gonna be some pulling back of some of the responsibilities or powers that the EU currently does back to the nation states? Yes, absolutely. How much and how fast and which countries? There's a lot of variables there.
Yeah. Well, I truly believe that the EU is not going to make it past 2030. Even Martin Armstrong, you know, he's sort of prognosed that. But if you look at the European Union, how they're acting right now, they're almost running on fumes. as far as the commission goes. I mean,
Yeah,
no one
they're
takes it
doubling
seriously.
down on Ukraine and
Ridiculous stuff, ridiculous things that everyone knows they're lying. I know they're lying. You know they're lying. Everybody else knows they're lying, and they know they're lying, and they're still sitting there doing it. You know, and it's suicide.
The main problem, the main problem I see with if um if it goes away, like let's say tomorrow the EU just went away, like none of the national governments are even remotely prepared to step in and fill some of those things and to regulate or manage their own financial situations, their currencies, their central banks, their immigration, their tech policies, their energy policies. Like no, there's just they're not. Like I mean so I have clients in Brussels. I have clients in most of the big countries, and I talk to a lot of politicians in like all the countries we've talked about so far, and none of them are. I mean, to say that a lot of the right wing parties in a lot of these countries are in their infancy would be an understatement, right? Like they're just not ready. And in fact, like even if tomorrow there was a European, let's say tomorrow there was an EU parliamentary election, the right wing is woefully unprepared to even fill those seats, let alone staff those new members of the European Parliament. Like, and that's part of the problem is that like, so if it went away tomorrow, what would be in its place? Question marks, confusion,
Well, you see
like
alliances change. You see that's the problem with the politicians. They choose alliances just like that, just to keep the power, just to keep it going, and not much would change. As far as the right wing goes, I would be careful about labeling which one's right wing. You know, I'm one of the co-founders of the Civil Coalition of Germany, which turned into the AfD. And Sven and Beatrix von Storch, who basically run the AfD, they're my best friends. I talk to them every single day. And there's more to the eye, more than meets the eye, put it that way. And they are very much prepared, and they have a consortium and a battle-hardened team that could definitely at least carry the flag and keep it stable. I wouldn't be worried about that at all, especially in Germany. I can't say for the other countries how it is. I know Orban's pretty solid in his.
But Orban's been in power for 15 years, and I think that's kind
Yeah.
of like when I go to CPAC and I talk to these people, I go to London and I talk to or France or Paris or even in London and Munich or Berlin. The main issue that I see, and the Trump administration found it out the hard way that in the first like V1, right, is that like thinking about governing and governing aren't the same thing. When you
Yeah.
actually get the levers of power and you actually can do things, what can and can't you do? How does stuff actually work versus the hypothetical, like, oh, we
Theory.
think we have a great plan, right? And then you
Yeah.
get there and you're like, none of this works, and everyone's trying to undermine me, and
Yep.
the bureaucrats and the people that are the career civil servants are undermining us. What do we do? And the judicial branch is stopping us at every turn. What do we do? Like that's
Yep.
different
Yeah.
than being prepared on day one. And I think that's what, in my opinion, what most of and whether it's center right or all the way right, like I'm so far right, I don't really fit in a place in European politics. Like I'm kind of off the chart on one end, and that's one of the problems that I mean I have when I talk to people. But then we talk for 5 minutes, and they're like, "Oh, actually,
Yeah.
you think
I
some of
get
the
it.
things?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I get it. Okay." So
Yeah.
like the main issue I see is that they're just like there's so many unknown landmines
Yeah.
that the day that they're like no amount of preparation will prepare them for the day they actually take power, if they manage to take power on day one. And so that's kind of where I see it, where like the EU, not I don't like the EU. I think the EU is a disastrous exercise in globalist control, right? But there are a few things it does get right. They do get food regulation pretty
Mhm.
well, and outside of COVID, they get medical regulation fairly well, like on medicines and things like that. Like they do a reasonably good job outside of COVID. COVID,
Yeah.
like literally take it
Yeah.
out and put it out.
Yeah.
Everything else, but like food, I eat better here. The quality of
Yeah.
the food is better here.
It's not hard to eat
Like
better than America. It's not hard to eat better than
I mean,
America.
low bar, right? Like it's
Yeah.
such a low bar that basically, like we can step over it. I don't have to try
Yeah.
and duck, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are those things where like the EU gets some things right now on a lot of stuff they get it completely, like GDPR they get wrong. Every energy policy, tech policy, net
Oh,
zero, all that stuff terribly, awfully, horrifically wrong. On
yeah.
migration, horribly wrong. On human rights, they
Well,
get it wrong. They get it wrong more. They get it wrong more than they get it right. But problem is that the governments of these countries aren't well prepared to fill that void
I
because they
agree. I
haven't for
agree.
30 years.
What if you want to boil it down? What they get right is keeping the citizens happy at their base level needs. You
Or
said it.
complacent.
Food.
Yeah, yeah.
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 Food, in medicine, right? Like everyone still gets vacation in Germany, 30 days a year, that kind of stuff, 20 to 30 days a year. You have mother's leave or father's leave now in Germany as well. So like the basic rights.
USB-C was great, right? Like I loved it when they made Apple get rid of the Lightning connector and we got USB-C. I was like, hallelujah. Right. Consumer
Yeah,
protections, they typically
yeah, yeah,
are very good, right?
yeah,
Outside of that, atrocious, like absolutely
yeah.
awful.
Horrible,
So
horrible.
And the
Yeah, I don't know.
taxes, I mean, but the taxes have been bad for forever, right? Pretty much.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
yeah.
relative. It's relative because when I was living in Germany, I was showing my wife the other day. I got because I'm still registered in Germany, I still have the residency there, and I get this my pension, my renta, I don't know what you call it, pension, I guess. What's going to be
Yeah.
calculated in all these years, and it shows you all the years that you paid in and what you paid in. And my wife was like, that's what you paid in? Like, Jesus, who even earns that? I mean, like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's what I paid in. And then, like, for the 1 year, it was like 280,000 euros that I paid into the pension. And you know how much money I had to earn to do that? And then you look at the outfit, your pension is calculated at 600 euros a month. And you're like, wait a second, that was only 1 year. How's that even
Yeah.
fair? And so,
That's
like,
one of my
yeah,
wife's big complaints
yeah,
is that
but
they
it's
don't,
fair
they
though.
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, think about it, Joey and Joe. You have great medical, right? And private pension or private health insurance in Germany. I can say in Germany, Hungary wasn't so great, but it wasn't bad. Here, it's $1,000 a year for private health insurance. $1,000 a year, full coverage, no deductibles. $5. I'm not sorry, $1 every time I go to the doctor. That's it. Great. There's a freaking private hospital in every corner here. In Europe, in Germany, I was paying like 400 bucks a month, 400 euros a month. Full coverage, deductible was 600 bucks, whatever it was. I had
Yeah,
like
we pay
back surgery.
1,400 for all of us, like the whole, like two
Yeah,
kids,
yeah,
my
yeah.
wife,
And it's
four,
so
yeah.
it's fair. The only
It's
reason they can do that is
subsidized
because
though,
of the
so
tax.
like that's
Yeah.
why. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's
Yeah, yeah,
subsidized also the taxes as well, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
the food in Germany too. Now, I remember when I was in Germany, I was like, man, the food is so good here. Why is it so cheap? Subsidized. All the food in
Hmm.
Germany was, I don't know if it is anymore, but it was when I lived there full time. And I
but the
remember I could go
pensions, the
shopping
pensions
for,
are going to run out eventually, right? Kind of
yeah,
like Social
yeah.
Security here. They don't have enough money because they don't have enough young people
The
coming up.
question is
They also
when?
don't move. They
When?
also don't move, right? So like that's one
Yeah.
of the big problems that like so we have this Shenzhen area and everyone, oh, there's no borders and we can move from here to here, except for
They
your
don't.
pensions don't move with you. That's one of my wife's biggest complaints is like she's like, well, I have a pension in here in Italy, but if I move to Germany to take a job or France or Germany, like it doesn't. So then you end up with a pension, a kind of sort of pension, and to claim it, like let's say at 65 or 70 or whatever, 68, 72, whatever it is here, that you'd have to file 3 or 4 different times if you lived in 3 or 4 different countries, right?
Yeah.
There's not like a collective system of pensions. It's everyone has their own, and then you hope for the best if
Which
they
is
still
where
exist in those
people,
countries.
which is where the fraud comes in because you have people filing for different benefits in different countries at the same time. In Germany, it's even goes so as far people file for, Social Security in 3 different regions and it's still not connected in Germany, in its own country. So
Yeah.
you have like these, and they also passed a law in Germany now that if you're Muslim and you have more than one wife, you get welfare for each wife.
Benefits for each wife, yeah.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
each,
yeah.
and then
And the Germans are like, wait a second, so I can get married? No, you can't get married to another woman. You can't have more than one wife. But wait a second.
Bigamy is not
but if you
legal
adopt,
for
but if you
you.
adopt, but if you adopt kids, and so the loophole for the German program is kids. Like if you adopt kids or you have kids, you can game the system to end up with basically unlimited benefits. You can have like 30 kids, and there you go. The Muslims have the problem, and not really a problem for them. I mean, it's a problem for us, not for them. But like they
Yeah.
just have 30 kids organically. So because they have 27 wives, so who cares? And they get money for everybody. Before you know it, like, and that's literally not a system that's sustainable for anybody. I mean, that's one of the problems, and I talk to this about to people here in Italy all the time. Is that your system would be great if it wasn't overburdened by the amount of
Yeah.
people that are here that
Yeah.
the system's not designed to support,
It
and that's
was
kind of the
great.
problem overall.
It was
I
great.
mean, I
I
love
lived
the private system here. It's
37
great. I
years
mean,
I've lived in Europe. I've lived in Europe for 37 years, 7 of those years in the military. So I remember the 80s and the 90s. It was utopia. It was amazing. It was incredible. I was like, why doesn't everybody live here?
well,
Now,
I mean,
you know,
the other big part of it too, and like can't go unspoken, is that like for the better part of the last 100 years, like they haven't had to spend very much money on defense. And so like why doesn't the United States have free healthcare? Like, well, because we're subsidizing basically the safety and security of the world. But like Europe hasn't. And now, so like right now, there's a lot of talk about them spending, 3-5% of GDP of each country's GDP. Like the money literally isn't there, right? It's like there's no way for them to spend that money because that money is literally already allocated towards their social programs, and they're already at over maximum in some cases. Like they're taking on debt to finance their governments. So now they're going to come in and say, hey, we need to spend 3 to 5% of GDP from where?
Exactly.
And so there's not enough stuff to go around for everybody. So either people got to go, which is what I would advocate for, so that there's enough money to be sustainable. And then they can spend 5% on GDP, and they can start bringing manufacturing back overseas, and they can start producing their energy. But they're not going to do that. So,
no, because even if they did, that would take another half a generation, because that's going to cost billions of dollars to repatriate everybody. It's like, because they got to pay for them to go back, and of course they're going to pay. They're going to pay for their flights. They're going to give them money to go back. It's the same thing in blue. It's like it's just there's almost no way out.
There's no free way out of this problem. It will take the better part of the rest of our lifetimes if they find the political will and the political balls to do it. The likelihood of that is very small. And that's kind of part of the problem, is that no one really wants to deal with the problem. So like, again, back to the EU question you asked, Joe, was like, cool, but right now a lot of the governments here and a lot of the politicians and the leaders here can kind of just kick the can to Brussels and say like, Brussels has to deal with that. That's their problem to figure out. They don't want to figure that. It's not even that they don't like Brussels or do or don't. It's irrelevant. The problem is that there's problems that they don't want to deal with. And right now they're Brussels problems. And if Brussels goes away, then suddenly they're their problems, and they have to figure out, and they have to solve them, and they have to pay for them. Whereas right now, like 22% of that goes to the European Union, and they get to spend it and do whatever and blah, blah, blah. But it's really just not their problem. And so that's the whole issue.
That's the whole issue.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
that no one's going to tackle it, because they're just pushing
what's the future though? I mean, because like you said, there are more Muslims than there are Christians, and it's just growing. Within 20 to 30 years, is it going to be a majority Muslim in every country of Europe, or where are we going?
Western Europe for sure. Western Europe for sure. I mean, it's already there in some place. Look at France. It used to have more churches than any country in Europe. Now it's got more mosques than any.
And it's inheriting the economies of those countries too. I mean, I remember being in Morocco, and they told me at the time, this was like during the Gulf War, but they were saying that the average Moroccan made it was something crazy, like $1 a year or something like that. But what are these people doing for a living? Where are the countries?
They're not.
Going? Yeah,
they're not. They're not. They're on. They get government. They get welfare. Like they get social programs to take care of them, their medical needs. They get X amount of money per month to do stuff on. If they have more kids or more wives, they get all that. Like the state pays for all of them. Like, so I mean, there's the ideal version. So I'll give you two answers to your question. One, there's the ideal version of like where the states take back control. I say states as in like the nation state, right? So like the national governments take back control and start affecting change is where they can. They need to start withdrawing from like some of these European Union conventions, like the ECHR and the Human Rights Convention, a bunch of these other things, so they can actually get rid of people and do the things they need to do. That's like a perfect world where they actually do what's required of them, do that which is necessary to survive. That would be ideal. What I think's the more likely scenario is probably one more round of elections in the European Parliament, and at the European level they try the Patriots for Europe, the people like AFD and Fidesz and RN and Lega and probably Fratelli Italia Fratelli's an EPP, but if when I think they're an EPP for strategic reasons at the moment, because politics. But I think if that switched, then you'd probably see some more shifts happen. But I think that there's a pathway towards them being able to stave off some of these things. It won't take one parliamentary cycle. It'll probably take 5 or 6 parliamentary cycles. We're talking, 20, 30 years of fixes. But that's like the more realistic option. Do I think that a bunch of countries are going to secede from the European Union? No.
So is the future poverty then, basically across the board, or?
I think there's a lot of status. I mean, I think there's a lot of status quo. I think there's it's It really just depends on if the economy collapses, that could really push stuff through. I look at at Great Britain. I look at their economic situation at the moment, which is kind of a microcosm of Europe as a whole, because of the fact that they aren't in the EU anymore, but they're still in Europe, and they still have a lot of the same problems that the rest of the European countries do, but they don't have the shackles, for better or worse, of the European Union, and they have a lot more problems to solve. So I could see them looking to them as more of a model of what could happen or can't happen. And I think, like, for instance, in London, I think I think the government's going to collapse before the next general election. I think that there's a lot of problems to solve there, and if the economy collapses there, then I mean, Yahtzee. I mean, like, it could go in 50 different directions. It really just depends on what happens on a daily basis. Like, could they go into like more of a civil war? Could they overthrow the government? Could we do, like, all those things are potentially possible? Likely, probably not. But I mean, we're getting into a territory where, like, if we don't fix some of the core building block problems that we have in the next 3 to 5 years, like, there's no telling what might happen, in my opinion.
Well, you spoke shortly upon the main issue, in my opinion, and it's the apparatus below the leaders. That's the beholden. They're beholden. They're weaponized in debt. They can't get out. They're the ones that are causing this to happen because they're allowing it to happen. They're the ones who push the button, sign the checks, sign the, pass along all the legislation. That's the big issue. People talk about all the time, all these evil leaders, let's get rid of them. Well, if the infrastructure is still underneath them, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's the problem we saw in the first term of Trump was the same exact thing. He tried to do that now a little differently, but there's still some people in there that are putting monkey wrenches in it. But that's the biggest issue that I see. You have someone has to pay their, like, I talked to a police officer during COVID, and I said, dude, I saw you throw a guy on the ground because he didn't have a mask on. I was a politician too. And I said, what the hell's wrong with you? And he said, look, if I don't do this, I could lose my job. If I lose my job, I can't pay my mortgage, my kids' college, all this kind of stuff. And plus, I got 2 years and I have my pension. So I'm like, how much is your pension? Like 40K? He's like, yeah, it's 44,000. And I said, so you're taking someone's civil liberties away, smashing their face in the ground for 44 grand a year? Are you freaking kidding me? And he said, dude, what am I supposed to do? And that right there is weaponized debt, in my opinion, is the biggest issue in America and in the West. Now, in the East, it's a little different. And that's why you see something like Bulgaria and Romania. They don't give a shit. They'll go on the street and go, they ain't got nothing to lose anyway. The earnings are less. They don't have the social systems that keep them in bay. And they don't have, of course, the GDP and the earnings that they have in the West as well. So they're going out in the street quick. They're going out and they're riding quick. And they're going out like they did in Bulgaria. They just said, oh, you're not legitimate. Listen to you. Yeah. So that, for me, that's where the attack has to be. It has to be on the infrastructure. It can't, these politicians are just, especially the European talking head puppets who have no legitimacy whatsoever. Macron. I mean, they wonder why they're not invited into the peace talks, because no one takes them seriously, because they're nobodies. They're absolutely nobodies.
Well, they don't have any leverage. Yeah, they don't have any leverage.
Because they don't have any personality. They don't have any background. They don't have any experience. I mean, you're talking.
Exactly.
It's like putting Cristiano Ronaldo against some kid from high school and saying you guys are even. No, sorry, that's not going to happen.
Sarkozy just got out of jail recently, I think, right? Or
who?
Sarkozy went to jail. Well, he went to jail and then he got out. Or I think there's something.
I always. I did like his the one episode where he was out shaking hands with the farmers, and then one farmer said, "I'm not going to shake your hand," and so he said, "Okay, fuck off." Then it's like you wouldn't see an American politician do that, but I thought that was hilarious. So I use that.
Yeah, that's the it's like a lot of people talk here. I mean, I see it on the internet all the time. I say here, but like Giorgia Meloni is not doing enough, right? She should be deporting more people and getting rid of this and getting rid of that. And the reality of the situation is, and I don't remember if I said this last time, but like, is that there's a lot of stuff that tied these people's hands, right? So like, they tried to deport people here from Italy, and the Italian judges stopped them and made them turn the planes back around and made them bring the people back to Italy, right? So there's like, political will is not necessarily the issue all the time. It's kind of the bureaucratic state. And in Europe, in America, we tend to think that the bureaucratic state is, this problem in DC that we can have. But I mean, all of Europe is a bureaucratic state. I mean, it's like living in a country that's run, or a continent that's run by the DMV, right? And so it's always difficult to try to explain that or navigate that. Like, what do you do, right? And I've had conversations with like elected officials in several countries here in Europe, and they're kind of like, yeah, we try every day on a daily, like, to move the needle a little bit, to put more legislation forward, but like the process is purposely slow. And
Mhm.
so like it takes a long time. Like, in fact, one of my clients is a MEP. He was telling me like it's almost impossible to repeal legislation. It's nearly impossible, right? And it would take a decade to repeal legislation. It's faster, more effective to write new legislation or to like reform existing legislation. Still there, but they have to change it, and that's the only way that you could do anything in the at the European level, right? Is by just changing existing law or creating a whole new law that supersedes the old one. But actually repealing it is not going to happen. And so it's going to take, so like, what do we do, right? It's going to take a lot of coordination from a lot of these national parties to talk to one another, to figure out how to get their ducks in a row, and what do they need, what playbook do they need to run at a national level and a European level to coordinate to make all of these things happen. Like, we have to walk two bubblegum spin plates on our on sticks, jump on one foot, like all at the same time in several countries together, right? And everybody kind of has to will be walking hand in hand and doing this all at the same time. Otherwise, like, it's not going to matter, right? You have to do all of these things. They have to all be prepared at the same time to go in and do all of these things. Problem is that, like, Europe, I said this last time, I actually said it earlier today, but like, is that Europe isn't really a thing. It's kind of like 27 raccoons in a trench coat. And so you've got this idea that Europe is this one big blob of countries, and it really isn't. It's 27 different countries that you all have, everyone has to kind of coordinate and get on the same page and do all of these things and maneuver them all together. And that's, I think, the largest challenge of all of them is to make any of these significant changes at the European level or the national level. They need to all coordinate and talk to one another. And while the left has really good networks and they have really good communication, and they have friendships and working relationships built between all the different kind of various apparatuses that they have, and they've been doing it for 75 years, we really just don't have a lot of that. And so I think one of the reasons it's been interesting the last 5 years to see is that there's a lot more communication, a lot more relationship and network building happening on the kind of the right side, everything from kind of the center all the way over to everybody, right? Anybody that is not considered a left-wing person, we all just talk more. We all work together. We all kind of know each other now. There's a lot more of that, but we need like orders of magnitude more, and we need to win elections. That's the important part.
NATO? I mean, NATO was an arm of the U.S., and now the U.S. is kind of like, with Trump,
Well,
you're on your own to a certain extent.
I was talking to somebody at the DoD the other day, and it's really interesting that the Trump administration he tried one thing. He tried to go through the EU and try to affect change through the through the European Union. Interestingly, most of the same countries are members of NATO, and they found that it's just easier to force change in Europe through NATO than it is through the European Union. Like, you talk to NATO leaders under the NATO kind of mindset, through the NATO lens, and all they're like, oh yeah, we can do, America's amazing, come on in, we're going to do all these things, it's going to be great. You talk to them through the European Union lens and you put that hat on for a moment, they're like, America is anti-democracy, we hate everybody. So like, the administration is now starting to push a lot more through NATO because they're just they're more receptive for whatever reason under the NATO hat. So like, NATO is what it is at this point, but for the United States, we're seeing more headway being made with the NATO hat on, under the defense hat, than we are under like the economic hat or the diplomacy hat under the European Union. For whatever reason, the Europeans they see NATO and they're like, yes, that's great, we like that. Cool. Let's try to. So that's why, like, the new national security strategy that they came out with, well, not came out with, but they published last week ish. Everything falls under that. Tariffs fall under national security. Energy falls under national security. Literally everything that the Trump administration is trying to do is now under national security through a national security lens, and they can utilize that to push NATO because everything's national security now. Literally,
But it's going to cost more for
Yeah.
each European country now that the United States is telling
Of course.
everyone that they have to
Yeah.
pay their share.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. America's tired of paying for that, man. We're tired of paying for that and then living off the high hog. acting like an ex-girlfriend or something that's, that's disgruntled now because we're saying we don't
We
want
all
to pay
have,
for it. You know what I mean?
they have great health insurance because they're not
Yeah.
paying for the other stuff. So
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how's that going to go when they run out of money? I mean, basically.
Well, they already ran out of money. They've already run out of
yeah,
money.
Mhm.
They're already
that
out.
ship sailed. Yeah. So they have a lot of, I mean, Europe, I mean, it seems, sometimes strange to be an American in Europe and be like, you guys are all effed up. I mean, we're pretty screwed up too.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
they, okay. Yeah. I was talking to a guy the other day. It's like kind of more of a left-wing, like economist type guy. I was like, hey, fine. You know what? Do nothing. You're right. I'm wrong. Do nothing. Let's see where it goes in 5 years. I was like, let's rehash this conversation in 5 years. Let's see who was right. Either your system is going to implode, which it will, because it's literally unsustainable, or what I'm saying is right. And you'll look back on me in 5 years and be like, oh my goodness, Joey, we should have listened. This is like, yeah, of course, because it's unsustainable right now today. It was like the conversation they needed to have was 5 years ago or 8 years ago when Trump
Yeah.
came here and was like, you guys need to stop being energy dependent on Russia. You need to stop importing your energy from the Middle East and North Africa. You need to start producing things at home. And they laughed him out of the room. That was probably the moment they should have done that. Now, like, they have to spend more money on defense, and they're going to have to cut social services, which is going to piss a ton of people off. But on the silver lining to all that is if they're not giving away so much free stuff here, maybe people won't want to come here anymore, and they'll start leaving willingly to go back to their countries of wherever that is. Hopefully, but there's not an easy, like, there's no painless solution to Europe's problems at the moment. Like, there just isn't one. All the options suck. It's just which one is gonna suck the least, I guess. Which turd do you want to flush last?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where they're at.
Well, where do you think do you think we'll have a resolution to Ukraine soon, or is this just going to be
Nope.
a 100-year
Nope.
war?
Nope. NATO's going to war, period. They're going to war, period. There's no way out of this. They're going one way or the other. And it'll probably be the tripwire states, all of the Balkans, the Baltics, and the Slavic states that are going to pay the price for that. This comes from a very clear source that they don't give a shit. They've declared they're going. The plans are written. It's happening. They have to. They have to do it to save their asses. The European Union has to do it to save their asses, cover up their mistakes, and blame everything on the war. There's for them right now. There's no way out of it except for collapse. And as sad as that sounds, as scary as that sounds, that's happening. I put money in the bank on that.
I think I think collapse will happen before war happens. The only reason I say that is because they're not going to be able to. I mean, unless they press gang people into military service, like nobody in Western Europe wants to go die for their multi-ethnic, multi-diverse economic zone.
Well,
Like, there's no sense of nationalism. Yeah, I mean,
No.
they're going to have to conscript people, and they're going to have to
They
do
are.
it at gunpoint.
They are.
And so, like, that's kind of where it's at. And at that point, like,
why
the
do you
whole
think
narrative
they're
falls
showing this?
apart.
Why do you think they're conditioning it? What are the videos that you see from Ukraine? You see the main video that you see from Ukraine is forced conscription. You don't see any other. You don't see frontline. Why is it in the digital age where everybody has a smartphone, you don't see any video footage from the war? You don't. All you see is the people getting conscripted at gunpoint because they're conditioning, right? This is what's happening. Look at these guys. They don't want to go serve and they're bad people and all this kind of stuff. Like, this is a psyop, man. Full on psyop.
And the interesting part is it's the lefty people who aren't going to want to go fight anyway, and
They're the one pushing the war. Yeah.
but they've killed nationalism. So, like, one of the things I spent the better part of almost 2 decades in the army, and like, I always think it's funny when they start showing white guys in recruiting commercials again, right? And that's neat. Like, if you start seeing Western countries start recruiting and there's white dudes in your commercials, it's a pretty good indication that there's going to be a war sometime soon, because like people have to go off and fight and die. It'll be really interesting. I mean, I live in Italy, or I live in Europe, so like, it'll be fascinating to me. I'm not going to go fight for anybody. Like, I can kiss my whole ass, like the whole thing, just plan it on there.
There was
Because like,
actually an ad, a TV ad on German TV with a woman in the Bundeswehr saying, "I am ready to go die for Germany." And I was like, God, they paid her probably $3,000 to say
exactly.
that. No, it's PR. It's PR. Is what I'm saying.
Of course. It's like, real
that's
people
what I'm
are
saying
like
is that they are so gullible that people are like, yes, patriotism. I'm like, wait a second. You have a flag with the gold stars on it for something that doesn't exist. Every nation, they say, oh, it's the largest economy in the world. Collectively, but it's not one economy.
Exactly.
It's not.
They say that about California too, but look at the state of California right now.
Shit. Stop talking shit. It's not an economy. They're singular economies. You're just stealing money from them to pay for this BS that they're out there peddling. And so this whole farce, it's going to collapse. The war's going to start. Europe's going to end. I don't know how. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that we're fighting in the trenches to make sure that there's at least some semblance of saving this. Because me personally, I love Europe. I absolutely love Europe. It was always good to me. I had the best time of my life here. Most of my life actually here. I mean, there. I'm in Turkey right now. It's sad for me to see this happening. You know, I remember when I got off the plane in 1986, landed in Germany, Cold War flaring, Russia on the other side, the Berlin Wall. That was exciting for me. And then I landed and I said, wow, this is like home to me. I never, if there was a home that I felt outside of America, it was Germany. And now I can't even set foot in that country. It's just, it's really, really bad. Now, of course, you know, if you go to small villages and stuff where they don't have immigrants and stuff, it's still the idealistic sort of thing. I mean, if you're driving down a road, I remember I had a girlfriend up in like northern Germany. I'm driving, and I saw the sign on a village that said, "We're celebrating our 1,100th anniversary, you know, of founding." You know, and you're an American, you're going, 1,100? Was Jesus alive then? You know, it's like, you know, you're like a 19-year-old kid going like, "Wow, this is culture. This is history." I really got into it. That's why I speak German like a German. I wrote bestsellers in Germany. I was a news anchor in Germany. I was an MTV VJ in Germany. Like I really got into the culture there, you know. And then I had to leave because it just turned into this thing that they're ruining. Horrible.
Yeah, that's you know, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I think there's a couple dynamics. You being in Turkey is kind of interesting too because like I'm really curious where Turkey ends up in all this because they're a NATO member. Um, I think they kind of sit in an interesting, awkward position at the moment where this is, and also like the United States. Like you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens if something happens because the NATO is so wholly dependent on the United States that with NATO without the United States there isn't really a NATO,
There
right?
is no name.
Like
No.
and so they're almost exclusively dependent on our ability to field divisions, right? Not
Yep.
brigades, not but full divisions.
Yeah, yeah.
So and most of the European countries would be hard pressed to supply more than one fully functional combat brigade, right?
But it's not about
And
that.
like
It's not about that, Joey. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but it's not about that.
eh,
It's about the appearance of war, the money going to war, the battles, and all these kind of
sure.
things that they talk about. It isn't like right now. What the hell is going on? We don't know. We don't have any footage. We have little cutouts. Oh, here's a building that was bombed in Kiev. You know, I have friends that visited us from Kiev, from Mariupol, they're just like, yeah, they're going back and forth, like, you know, just chilling out, having a good time, coming to Europe,
Like
and you know, like,
yeah.
wait a second, if
I
it's in
see it. I
such
see them in
total
Central Rome.
war,
I see the UA plates all the time in Central Rome and in
yeah,
Monaco and
yeah,
everywhere else.
yeah,
It's great. It
back
must be
and back
great.
and forth, and back,
It's I
you
mean
know,
ultimately I think it's a money laundering operation, but like that's the defense
of course
military
it
and
is,
industrial complex to begin with, right? So like it's just about
yeah,
moving money from one place to the other, but ultimately
yeah,
like people die in war, and that's why like
yeah,
I look at like JD like the vice presidents, and I look at a lot of the other like even Pete Hegseth, right, the Secretary of War. Eh, Our generation has gone and done this endless war stuff, and we've seen what happens to our friends. We've seen what happens to, I mean, even ourselves. Like, and I don't know. Depending, there's a lot of variables, man. Like, depending on who's in
I
power in the
know,
United States when it happens, depending on. But like, if it happened tomorrow, like I don't, you know, that's going to be a real interesting conversation to have in the Oval Office between the Secretary of War, the Vice President, the President, the National Security Council. You know, two of those guys have been in the Middle East and seen what this shit does to people, and like they're not going to advocate for sending a bunch of Americans to
yeah,
like die in some other random country again. And the American public doesn't have the appetite for it.
no, they
Right.
don't,
So even if we printed all the money in the world, like you're still gonna have to put boots on ground and you're still gonna have to go do stuff. And at that point, like you're still get like there's a lot of stuff that has to happen for that
yeah,
to that to make sense. And like I feel like the people at large just don't believe that. I mean, believe the media as much as we used to, right? Like people are more apprehensive. And I think after COVID, this was a good thing you were talking about the cop earlier, right? I think a lot of people realize that the government's not your friend during COVID, right? The police, everyone's like, oh, the police, the police. The police are still a functional arm of government, right? They're the
Yeah.
government. They're the enforcement mechanism of government. And I find that a lot of people all over Europe now have been like, we were a little too trusting of our government, of the media, of everything else. Like, I run into people all the time that are like, oh yeah, we're not going to vaccinate our kids. We're like, why? And they're like, because I just don't trust that the government and the doctors are telling us the right thing anymore. Like, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but it used to be unquestionable. They like what the government said, what the government put out was just that was the gospel truth. And now
Yeah.
there's a little sliver of like, is it really? And I think that's the problem that's where my holdup is on a lot of the narrative and a lot of the variable stuff is that like I don't know. I don't know where people are yet. It hasn't been long enough for me to get like a really good take on like do the European people. I know the leaders have an appetite for war because they don't ever have to
Mhm.
go fucking do it. But like,
Exactly.
do the actual people have appetite for war? I don't
No.
think so. I
No.
don't think they're willing to go die for like they don't like their countries in the first place. They spent the last 70 years destroying the idea of nationalism in Europe. Do they
Yeah.
really want to go die for like their economic zone? I don't think so. I don't think that they do. And the fact of the matter is like, and in France or in some of these other countries, like they've realized that there's more of them than there is of the government. So like, we can just riot. We'll burn it all to the ground. Like, then whatever happens, happens. Like it'll just turn into absolute chaos. So like,
Yep.
if I was a leader in Europe that was pushing for war in Europe, we have to be careful of Russia. I would be careful saying those things because I don't think that the people have the same trust in government that they had 10 years ago. And I don't think they have the appetite for it today. And I don't know that there's any circumstance I can think of that would change that appetite, right? That they would be like, oh, you know what? Yes, I trust my government right now, and I can't wait to go to war. Like I don't even know what would have to happen for the people to get to the point where they'd be like, rah, rah, let's go. Like,
Yeah. No.
yes, give me a rifle. I want to go charge and like
Well, you know
I
who
don't
would
see
do
it
that?
happening.
You know who would do that is the Russians.
Yeah. But
You know what I mean?
but
Like,
yeah, but like I have
be
no
careful.
appetite to fight. I mean, I have no fight. I mean, I having a conversation with a diplomat the other day, and I was like, frankly, I was like, Russia has more in common with Europe than they do with any of their allies at the moment. And I was like, I would rather see Russia on the side of Europe as part of Europe, which is that they are a part of Europe. They've tried for the better part of the last 150, almost 200 years to be a functional member of Europe, be part of the economy, be part of that. Like I would rather see that happen than
Yeah.
anything else. But for
Yeah.
some reason, they have to have this Russian boogeyman. It's insane to me that like, and it's not even just like, oh, today we, culturally, like it's a Christian country. Like they identify with all of
Yeah.
these things that are what we would consider the West. Like we have to defend the West and Western society is worth saving. Like Russia thinks and does all of those same things. Like that's just what it was. And for some reason, we just have this mental block that like, oh, Russia's the bad guy. We have to fight Russia.
Yeah,
Russia's
it's
going
like
to
Cold
invade and
War
blah.
mentality.
We don't. You say
that's-
So,
we.
like,
You say we, but
I-
it's not us. It's like I don't know any military man that's against that says Putin's the bad guy. I don't know any military guy that I know a lot of military guys. But now, what do you think of the Core Five? You hear about that? The Core
which
Five, the new economic union. What is it? Japan, America, Russia, China, and India. That they're talking about in the White House. That they're talking about in the White House. It's going to like replace BRICS and sort of break down the entire, cut out the Brits, the empire and all of the control they have over financials. Like I did a video
well,
on that like 3 days ago, and it went crazy. It went really, really crazy. And then it got retweeted, and then someone from the White House, I think, or someone who works in the White House, wrote an article about it. And I was like, so my intel was right. And now they're talking about the Core Five, which is crazy.
one of the other grouping of countries that I thought was interesting was how they were talking about splitting off Austria, Hungary, Italy,
Yeah.
and
Well, that's
from the
Trump.
European Union.
That's
Yeah,
Trump trying to
which
get. That's Trump trying to pull them out because Austria, most people don't know, isn't even in NATO. So now
no, they're not.
now they have like this whole delegation trying to push them into NATO real quick to save Austria, from the evil America.
From save them from exactly like that's the thing is that it's so it's so just it blows my mind sometimes like just the mentality of the whole thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I don't understand. I mean, I do like it's usually money and power and
of
like
course.
they have an agenda somewhere, but right.
Status
But like
quo.
it blows my mind sometimes. I'm just like, why? Like, why? Like, why would you want like? I get it. You need to be prepared, but like the idea of going to war with Russia is so asinine to
Ridiculous.
me.
Yeah.
Like it's just so like for what? Like I can't think of a reason that I want to go, that I would want to go die, or that I would even be comfortable sending uh 19 and 20-year-olds, like if
Well,
I was a member of the government, to go die to fight Russia for who, for what, for
well,
why?
I mean, look at
Like
every
great.
war with Russia. What the Nazis sent in like 11 million, and what no, was it 8 million, and 2 million came back out or something like that?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
Napoleon tried the same thing,
Napoleon,
and the same thing happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
it,
Napoleon
it's
650,000,
not an
25,000 came
ideal,
out.
but for, for what? Like that's the crazy part. I mean, that's why I mean I've said this to U.S. diplomats. I was like, I would way rather see Russia on our side. Like if I had to pick,
You're not
this
the only
is
one.
hot
You're
take.
not the only
Yeah,
one.
hot. Like I just get me canceled
Yeah,
in some of the
between
circles
Russia
that I
and
run in. But
China, for
like
sure.
if I had to pick, if I had to pick between Russia, China, and India, which of those three countries would I want on our side? Like Russia, 100% every day, every single day. Like they are
Closer
the
to us than any other nation.
yes, like and the rest of Europe, like
Attitude,
and in
attitude,
fact,
grit, attitude,
yeah.
grit. The way that we see things, Christian values, the whole works. They are so close to America, and especially that gritty sort of in your face kind of thing. Like we are very close. And I'm not saying
It's a slight aggression, like the slight edge of aggression. Like what'd you say?
yeah,
That's that's
Yeah.
that's the thing. And if Russia aligned with the United States and for the most of the rest of Europe, like suddenly China's not a problem anymore. Suddenly India's
well,
not a problem anymore. Suddenly all these countries are like, well, what are you gonna
but
do? Like
China's never
there's
been.
a multipolar shift that just
China's an internal country. China, they don't go out and attack. They're an internal country. They do everything with economic thing. We can deal with that if we have a partner like Russia, I think. And if you look at if you look at that, like you were talking about, Americans and Russia together as an economic and geopolitical power, man, that's like not and it's not saying, everyone says Putin's bad, but everybody's bad. Everybody does
but
this shit.
imagine
Everybody does it,
imagine a
you know?
modern Eastern and Western Roman Empire, right? Like that's what like that's the what's possible, right? Is
Yeah.
that globally, like there's not really anybody that's gonna whatever
I'm
we
glad you
essentially would
mentioned that
say.
because, like you say, globally, the globalists, the World Economic Forum, and all those people are trying to kind of push this whole not only financial but political thing across the board, and it seems to be coming to light, even though some people still say it's a paranoia, and a lot of it is superstition or whatever. But
It's definitely not. I don't think I mean, it's not a conspiracy. I mean, there's documents written about it. Like they've openly talked
Yeah.
about it and given
Yeah.
conferences. Like it's not crazy to think that. I think the big problem that they never really thought of is that like that's not how people work. And I think
Yeah.
anyone that spent more than 5 minutes talking to like I don't know people in other countries, they
Humans.
realize that like
Humans.
that's not how like people are relatively tribal. Like I mean
Yeah.
that's why I absolutely like rail on the idea of the European. Right? There's no such thing. Like Europeans aren't a thing. You've got like everybody like I live in Italy, but everyone's like everybody hates the French, right? Like that's just like
right.
that's what it is. Like and the French don't like anybody else, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's just but like they are the French. Like I was talking to a business owner the other day. Was like, oh, I want to do business in Europe, and I'm like, cool. What country? He's like, what do you mean? I just want to do business in Europe, and I'm like,
Oh,
great. What country in Europe would you like to do business in? Because they're all
yeah.
literally different
Very
countries,
different.
like
Stay away from
wildly
Italy.
different. I was
Stay
like
away from Italy.
culturally differently. I mean, so if you know people in Italy and you know how to navigate
Oh
Italy, it's
God.
significantly
What a
easier.
mess.
But like,
What a mess.
I don't disagree with you in any. It is a mess. It's like organized. No, it's not even organized chaos. It's
Not
just
even
chaos.
organized.
But like, if you understand it and you know where to go and you know how to
Yeah.
manage it and you
Yeah.
speak the language, like it's much easier. But like again, it's just different. So like this whole idea that they're gonna push through like one big global thing and everyone's gonna do like no, that's not how things work.
Not
Cultures
gonna
are
happen.
wildly different. How
Yeah.
people like the differences in how people solve problems, just how they think about a problem. We have problem X to solve for. What kind of solutions are we going to come up with? How different countries, even within Europe, let alone Asia
Man, that's
and
funny you
Latin
say that.
America, is
That's funny.
wildly different. And so
Well, it's
like
funny you say that because from all the countries that I lived in, that was one of my major strengths is how I solve problems. Like I add value by solving problems. That's literally my strap line. And it's because the Germans, if there's a problem, they'll call a meeting to discuss the problem and decide who's going to solve the problem. Then they'll have another meeting about the problem. And Americans would come in and we're like, all right, what's the problem? Okay, here's the solutions that I see. What do you think? Bam, 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 done. Let's move on. And people are like, how can you do that quick? Don't you have to go to a consortium? And I was like, no, what's the goal? Where do we need to go? Let's find a solution, make it happen. It's a win-win. Yeah, let's do it. And adjust as we move. And that was one of the strengths that I had. And I actually was a sought after advisor because of that. But it's funny
What
you
I do
say that.
now.
I never, yeah. Well, now it's like, I mean, I still get asked, but I don't really do that anymore. I just fund company. I fund projects and infrastructure. So I don't get into the nitty gritty anymore, unless it's just with some political advisory, which I don't take money for because I don't want to become an operative. So
Yeah, you don't want to get.
someone told me once, never make money from politics and you'll always be safe. So I always have my businesses and then I do politics. And it's all like pro bono, I guess you could say.
The challenging thing is just well, I'd say the big challenge is understanding that that's how it works and then being able to do something about it. Because like it took me the better part of like I've lived in Italy for 5 years now, and it's taken me up until basically 2025 to really be like, oh, that's how it worked. Like, got it. And like I could tell people that, but like if they go march off into a conversation or a meeting with somebody and not understand the intricacies of what they're doing, they're just gonna like and implode. But like that's just the reality of what it is. So like even this exercise of the European Union, to go back to kind of a topic we talked about at the beginning, which is just like they're so wildly different that trying to get them all to agree on something and move in the right direction to fix any of their major problems is a huge hurdle. And I don't, I mean, as much as I dislike the EU, I still think the EU is the best today, the best and most realistic vehicle for change to get things back the way it needs to be, just because of the power it currently possesses. To dismantle it and give that power back to the state would be its own battle, and then we'd still have all the same problems that we have to fix now, right? And so, like, what do I think is going to happen with NATO? A whole lot of nothing, a lot more spending. I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of money.
Yep.
So like if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, how do I make money? What's my opportunity? Defense, or like just defense and energy. If you go into defense and energy and that's where you focus for the next 10 years, you're probably going to make a shit ton of money. And so like, that's just the reality. NATO, what I think the EU is going to do, I think they're going to have, if they want to survive in any capacity, they're going to have to change. You're starting to see it now. Like now, even some of the lefties are like, oh, migration. Oh, we should probably talk about this. Maybe there's some things we can do. I don't know. Let's start. Like when even the left is the left in Europe is talking about deportation, like the Overton window has shifted. Like
well,
significantly.
they also use that. That was the entire ploy in the first place. That's why they get the digital ID in there, so they can control immigration now, because we have such an immigration problem. So let's call it the problem, and now we'll find a solution for you guys. Everybody's under control, and we're doing this in the name of your safety.
I mean, if you look at the top there, it's all pharmaceutical companies anyway. I mean, that's why Ursula and her husband, it's cause a medical problem, and then we have the medicine that will fix you. It's not.
Well, it's just
once you recognize the patterns.
Thing. Look, Ursula was under charges in Germany as a defense minister, right? And then they said, look, you either go to Europe and do what we say, or we're going to put you in jail. Same thing with what's his name from Portugal? What's that guy's name? What's his
gosh.
He's the second president under Ursula. What's his name? Whatever his name is, I forget. Same thing. He was under charge. He was the prime minister, the president of Portugal, and they put him up on charges, and then they said, look, you either go to the European Union, do what we say, or you're going to jail. So now I got these two people in the European Union.
Silva.
Silva, that's his name.
Silva. Yeah.
Was it Silva? Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Or is it? It's either Silva or Costa. But yeah, anyway, there you go.
Oh, it's Costa. It's Costa.
Costa.
Yeah. And so there you have two criminals, literal criminals that are up on charges in their own country. And I said that years ago, because when the AfD got formed and we sent Beatrix to the European Union for her first term, and then she went to the Bundestag in Germany, it was a joke. It was like, these people are getting paid a lot of money, like 130 grand or 160 grand a year, to go to the European Union. And if they even show up at the parliament,
most everything.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
And if they even show up, and if they even show up at the parliament, is even a thing itself. And then they have no rights. They can't suggest laws. They can't do anything. They're just like sitting there voting yes, no. Okay, even if you said yes, we're still going to say no. Like it's just it's a farce. It's
the illusion.
And it's the system.
The European Parliament.
It's the system. It's the system. And I'm telling you, you pay someone 130 grand a year, they don't care what they're doing. Every citizen, the only one, Fidesz, you know, Fidesz, what's his name? The guy from Crete or Greece or wherever he's from, that's in the European Parliament, is calling everything out. You see
Oh
this guy?
yes, yeah.
Oh
I've
yeah,
seen it.
he's
Man,
not
he's calling
he's
everybody out. He's a Jeffrey Sachs. He's like interviewing Jeffrey Sachs, I think his name is, and this guy's calling everybody. He's gonna get in trouble. He's gonna watch this stuff because he's not scared at all talking about this stuff. And you even have Elon Musk retweeting this guy. And this guy was a social media influencer before he went into politics.
Speaking
So
about
that goes to
Elon
show you.
Musk, they just fined him a bunch of money. What is going on with that?
Yeah, well, that's
uh,
that they need to do that. That's another diversion. Yeah, why they're doing
to
that? They're doing
justify. Well,
yeah.
they're using it to. I mean, so the way that the European Parliament writes regulation. Oh, so the way it works in general is that the council has all the power. They get to propose the laws. The minister or the MEPs just get to vote yes or no, and they get some discussion permissions basically on some of their
But they can
committees,
still
right?
veto it. But they can still
Yeah,
veto it. They can still say we
yeah.
don't care if you voted yes. If you decide anyway.
Yeah, so like in reality, what oftentimes happens is the MEPs vote no, and then they veto
Yeah.
their no votes,
Yeah.
right? They pass it
Yeah.
anyway. So, but the interest, so how regulation works is usually in the European Union is that they say that so GDPR is a really good example of this, right? So they say that you can't allow hate speech on your platform. Okay. And they're like, so then as a platform, I'm like, okay, what's hate speech? What does this look like? How do I ensure that I'm
Monitor it, yeah,
compliant?
yeah.
And they're like, well, just do whatever you think is best, and we'll let you know if you don't do it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Like that's the whole like on some of the, and that's like on the speech side. On the technical side, they're like, hey, you have to protect data. Data needs to be secure. And so I know people in the industry in cybersecurity, and they were like, cool. So what do you want us to do? Like, what standard do we need to meet? Like, what would give us something to go on so we can make sure that we're meeting your standard? And they were like, just do whatever you think's best, and if you don't do it, then we'll let you know.
Yeah.
And so you basically
Look,
have to wait for a data breach or a security violation to happen, something
yeah.
catastrophic, and then
Figure
they're
out,
going
yeah.
to come in and be like, "Oh, well, you didn't meet the standard." You're like, "Well, what
Yeah.
standard?" Like that doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Here's a fine for 100 million euros. And you're like,
Yeah. Well, they have. This is
"That's
the
what
first
happened."
time ever that X, Apple, and Facebook or Meta, they all agreed. They all said no to the European Union. You heard that, right? So they wanted Apple to
Yeah.
open their phones. They wanted Meta to open up their data or whatever, and then, of course, Elon. And they said
They
no.
wanted
They all
X to
said
open
no
up his
together.
API so they could figure
Yeah.
out who the main issue was really that the researchers in Europe, so like thought police, wanted to have access so they could figure out what anonymous accounts were saying what mean
Yep.
things about European politicians. Like that's the crux of the problem is
Yeah.
that they didn't allow researchers access to data. And X
Yep.
was like, no, we're not going to give you access to user data. Like that's just never,
Yeah.
that's not happening. If you like, people are allowed to say mean
Especially,
things on the internet. Like that's it.
especially when they have the GDRP. I mean, like the Europeans are the ones that brought the GDRP in the first place. And now they're saying, well, wait a second, the GDPR is for you, but not for me. So it's kind of thing
the
ridiculous.
the GDPR, the DSA, like the Digital Services Act, are just ways for them to control tech platforms, largely targeted at American big tech companies. Now, why is it American big tech companies? Well, because they've made regulations so awful here in Europe that no European big tech companies can exist. They don't exist because
No,
it's too difficult to do business
yeah,
here. So not they
regulation's
made it so
impossible.
hard. They made it so hard that small and medium-sized tech companies in the United States can't do business here. The only people that can compete here, and the only people that have enough money to do anything in Europe, are big American tech companies, right? They can
Yep,
spend the money to just brute force through all of it.
yep.
There are no European big tech companies for that very
No,
reason, and the small and medium ones will never get there because they can't compete either. And
nope.
like
They
that's
grow and
the
sell. They
that's
found
that's
and they grow. They found and grow to a certain point, then they sell to the Americans. Yeah.
that's it.
What
That's
about
that's
what
how
Mhm.
about
that's how it works.
cryptocurrency? How is that faring in Europe? I know that Spain recently proposed a 47% tax on Bitcoin if it gets cashed out, but I don't know if it's
You know, the only thing they know how to do here is how to tax stuff and
Yeah.
regulate stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they'll try to regulate tech that they don't understand and they don't own and they don't create, and then they'll try to tax anybody that makes money off of it. Like that's pretty much the game plan. I mean,
Yeah.
AI is another good example of this. So like, if you the the main issue with AI in Europe is that they don't create any of it here, and they won't create any of it here anytime soon, mostly because they don't have the energy to do it, right? So like if they wanted to create, if they had the software developers and they wanted to create their own models here, and they wanted to create like a, you know, like a data center to be able to crunch and to be able to run the models, the amount of power they would need would black out half the continent. Like they just can't, they can't compete because they don't produce enough power. Like it's one of the other reasons why they can't reindustrialize here, right? Like can't
Yeah.
bring manufacturing back from China because they simply don't have enough energy, right? And they can't import enough energy to do it. It doesn't work that way. It's way too expensive for them to even consider importing energy. So like what's going to happen here, they're going to try and regulate American tech companies here with crazy burdensome regulations that are going to try to stifle growth and development of AI, and they just won't utilize it here. They'll use some like kind of like what they did with Apple AI here that was kind of not really released in Europe as it was in the United States. They're going to give Europe like the kind of half functional broken version of whatever models or whatever tools are available to the rest of the world, and Europe's just going to get to play with it, and they can regulate away, and they can tell them they have to have this and that, and okay, great. And the only companies that they're going to have access to are the largest American companies because that's just how what Europe does. And so that's how technology, that's how crypto is going to end up. All they're going to do is try to tax it and
But
overregulate it so that
they're
it
not
can't be
going to be able
created
to really
here.
ban it, right? Or hopefully.
I mean, it's not even about banning it because there's like, I mean, they could say like, hey, we're going to ban it, but that puts them at a disadvantage, not the rest of the world. So that's the big challenge here. And I mean, I spoke at a panel a couple months ago now in Spain about like AI and technology and kind of where the U.S. policies and stuff were, and really the big challenge will be, and what it all boils down to is energy essentially. Like Europe, until Europe solved, I mean, all the other problems we've talked about tonight are fantastic, amazing. There's big things and all these other stuff, but until they figure out how to produce energy here in Europe domestically, none of the other problems really matter. Like cost of living's not going down. People aren't going to be able to own businesses. They're not going to be able to compete in the tech space. They're not going to be able to compete in the manufacturing space and reindustrialize in the areas they need to, whether it's defense, automotive, pharmaceutical. It's just they're not going to be able to compete. And they're going to get squished out because China's creating more energy than they know what to do with, and so they're not going to bring back. Like China's not going to lose stuff unless there's an alternative in Europe, which would be organic and homegrown. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they can have all the technology, all the smart people, all the regulation, all the best food and wine and culture in the world. But if they can't figure out how to power all of it, the rest of it is largely irrelevant. And I told a group of Fortune 100 CEOs the same thing. Like, if you guys don't figure out how to power your stuff soon, it's not going to matter.
Well, if
So
they brought
nuclear,
nuclear back,
yeah,
that would.
nuclear is the
Yeah.
only thing that can really so there's
Yeah.
two things that have to happen for that. One is nuclear, and the rest of it is a bridge to nuclear. So the best way for them to do that is to import cheap LNG from the United States, negotiate the cheapest price possible to get them enough energy until they can start building more reactors, and build reactors like they're going out of style. I mean, that's it. Short of that, like,
France has
cool,
nuclear, right?
good
Or
talk.
a little bit.
France has a ton of nuclear. They do. They produce a fair amount of energy in France. The issue is that the rest of Europe doesn't really. And so not they have enough that they can utilize for consumers and for everything else, but it's very expensive because they don't produce enough of it, and they import most of their oil and gas from North Africa and from the Middle East and from Russia. So they're paying a premium for to import all this energy. Where if they had nuclear here and within domestically, they wouldn't have to do that. So it would lower the cost of energy overall. But again, I mean,
And the green movement is kind of just
that's what killed Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, Spain, that's what killed Spain. That's what killed Germany. I mean, Germany's manufacturing sector is in the toilet at the moment because they have no energy. Like, that's just like, that's it. You can't build stuff you can't make anything if you don't have energy. And it's simple too, like not even to talk like, oh, we have big factories. I talked to a guy the other day. It was like, hey, I want to open my own business here in Rome. And I was like, well, cool. Why don't you just get a loan? He's like, okay, well, even if I got all that, do you know how expensive it is to turn the lights on?
Yeah.
Like businesses literally can't function. They can't open a business because they can't afford to turn the lights on in their shop. Like that's where like the rubber meets the road capitalism type stuff, where like these policies actually impact people, is that they simply just can't. You can't open a business because you can't afford to turn the lights on in the store. Like that's it, and you got a business. You can't afford the energy costs. I mean, and that's Europe in a nutshell.
Yeah. Oof.
Yep.
That's so depressing, but at the same time, I think that the first move towards solving a problem is recognizing the problem. So hopefully, maybe other people will start doing that. We'll see what happens.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. I initially was thinking about talking about international conflicts, but I think it got to be more about Europe, which I love talking about Europe. I was born in Europe and lived there as well. And when you talked about going to London, I loved going to London when I was living in Spain, just because you hear English everywhere, and it was even if it's not our English, but it's still familiar. And
Close enough.
yeah.
Close enough. Close enough. It's
thing.
comfortable. It's nice to be able to go to a place and just speak normally and have people understand you and take care of problems that you need to take care of without having to figure out how to translate or pick the right word.
I actually enjoy living in like whenever I moved to like I said, I've lived in 10 countries in my life over the last 37 years. And I always chose a country where I didn't speak the language and didn't know anybody. Like that was always my big thing. Like, all right, let me go full on in, dive in head first. It was amazing. And what I realized, especially here in Turkey now, is with all this riffraff going on, all the politics and stuff, I don't understand them. So I don't get any of that flack. So I get what I want to get. Yeah, I get what I want to get, and that's it. I don't get any of the flack, any of the side talks, and on the side of your face kind of stuff. None of that stuff. I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's the same for me in Italy. Like I don't speak fluent Italian, but I understand enough of it that I'm kind of like, eh. And if I just tune it out, I don't have to pay attention to all the other drama and nonsense that's going on around me. So that part is definitely nice. There is an advantage to not speaking the language.
Yeah.
But from like a daily basis, like just like if I have a problem with my water or if I have a problem with the internet or something like that, like it just there's like
a wife, right?
just
Your wife's
comfort.
Italian.
Yeah,
wife's
so
Italian.
she literally she hates it because she's like, why do I have to solve all the problems? And I'm
Mine
like,
too.
oh.
Yeah.
And
Mine
so like
too.
Italiana,
yeah.
you got to do it.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Like in London, it's just nice to go to. She loves it when we go to London because she's like, you get to do everything now.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, my wife, like we're looking at moving to America because I founded this Take America Back organization, which is like exploding right now, and for citizen servant leadership and actually training citizen servant leaders and training programs in person, online, a media channel called Tab Media, Take America Back Media. It's going really, really quick, and a lot of people, big names that are paying attention to it. My wife's like, the first thing I'm going to do when I get to America is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to do everything. You're going to deal with electricity. You're going to deal with the rent. You're going to deal with the landlord. You're going to deal with all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I get it.
That's why my life when I go to DC occasionally for work and stuff, and my wife is just like, this is amazing. I don't have to do anything. Like she's take it. You argue with the front desk staff. You get to deal with the waiters. You get to deal with the airport people. Like she just gets to be a passenger princess at that point.
Sometimes I'll put her ahead of me because of her accent. She's Ukrainian, and sometimes in America, that's she's Ukrainian but also a Turkish citizen. So it's like she speaks 5 languages. So I'll put her up there with a little accent. Sometimes it softens the blow a little bit.
You're coming from the top with the haymaker. Yeah,
exactly.
So, anyway, hey, thanks for having me on, man. I told you last time, like I love these kind of conversations.
I love the free reign. I love the free reign.
Yeah.
The
Well,
long form stuff. We get to talk about like
real stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I'd loved having you guys on, and I thought you would go well together just because you have similar experiences and similar familiarity. So I'd love to do this again sometime. And happy holidays. And where can they find you guys? Joey, where can they find you on the internet if somebody wants to?
So either on X or on Instagram at Real Joey MUS. Same on both of them. You can find me there.
Perfect. And Steve or Steven?
Real Joey MUS. I'm going to follow you right now on X.
I did that while we were talking.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So you can find me at Stephen Eugene Kuhn on every channel including YouTube and all the other ones except for X, which is for some reason my account got hacked. So I had to get a new one. Kuhn Stephen 90717. So really memorable, like one of those memorable accounts. So.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again and happy holidays. And
thank you.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. And I definitely want to have you guys on soon. And I want to hear more about the activities that you're doing too. But Take America Back, that sounds fascinating.
I'd love to do a show on that one because man, it's taken off like crazy. And I'm talking like retired generals coming out of the woodwork. I'm talking like people you would know from the media and from government coming to me going like, look, your message is spot on. And there's a gap that needs to be filled and it needs to be filled by you. And this is coming from, and it's really astonishing to me because I never planned this. I just started doing videos like less than a year ago and just started talking about politics and my experience, and it really struck a chord with the right people. So, pretty exciting stuff. I wasn't looking, to move back to the States, but if this is my calling, then that's what I'm doing. And my wife's ready to go too. So,
That sounds good. Well, thanks
Go where
again.
you're needed.
Yes.
yeah,
That's the
exactly.
ultimate
Exactly.
part. So,
And
yeah.
to our listeners, until next time.